Jai Gurudev. Just will after meditation, we'll start with the invocation. Invocation to the Guru Parampara in our studies in the memories of Gurudev, our weekly Sunday study circle. Let's bow down in the lotus feet of Guru Parampara. Agrad sansayambodhi samutaranatharanim Vande vichitrarthapadam Chitram tam Guru Bharatim Sada sada anugraha nigraha grihita muni vigraho bhagavan sarvasamu Shadam Durvasa Jayati Desikaha Prathamaha Trambaka Vihita Santati Tamra Parani Sanmaktika Prakara Kanti Vises Bhajaha Urve Jayanti Guru Go Guru Sastra Sindhu Kalalola Keli Kalanamal Kardhara Jayati Guru Reka Eva Sri Sri Kanto Bhubi Pratitaha Tada Paramuratir Bhagavan Maheswaro Bhuti Rajasya Sri Somananda Bodha Sri Mat Utpala Vinihisitaha Jayanti Samvida Amod Sandarva Dik Prasar Pinaha Tada Aswad Bharaves Brahmahitam Mati Satpatim Gurur Lakshmana Guptasya Nada Sammohinim Numaha Sada Abhinavaguptam Yat Puranam Chaprasidhamata Hridayam Tat Paro Ullasaya Swayam Asfurje Anutaram Abhinavarupa Saktiha Tadgupto Yo Maheswaro Devaha Tada Ubhayamalārupam Abhinavaguptam Sivam Vande Yaha Purnananda Visranta Sarvasastrartha Paragaha Sri Chemarajahaso Drisyadristam Me Gurutamaha Sri Vasugupta Mahaguru Somananda Prabhu Utpala Acharyan Abhinavaguptam Natham Vande Sri Chemarajascha Namo Nikhil Malinne Vilas Pan Patiyase Mahamaheswarai Sri Ramai Gurur Murtaye Jai Gurudev Har Har Mahadev Namah Karunya Dehaye वीराय शुभदन्तिने भक्ति गम्याय भक्तानां दुःखहर्त्रे ते नमस्तुते यस्य उन्मेषनिमेषाभ्यां जगतः प्रलयोदयोः तं शक्तिचक्रविभं प्रभवं शङ्करमस्तु नमः शिवाय सत्यतं पञ्चकृत्यविदायिने चिदानन्दघन स्वात्म परमार्थ अवभासिना आस्यानं चित्रस्योगं साकारत्वमुपागतम् जगद्रूपतया वन्दे प्रत्यक्षं भैरवं वपुहा ओमानन्द सुन्दर पुरन्दर मोक्षमाल्यं मौलोहटेन निहितं महिषासुरस्य पादाम्बुजं भवतु मे भवतु मे विजयाय माजुमाचिर सिंचित मनोहरम् अंबिकाया सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषा पुनातु वः सहस्राक्षुर्भगवान् सहस्रपाता गले अंगी घ्रीणमूले नयने च निश्चला त्रयो अपायामीयं पुरुषा उपासते ॐ सन्नो मित्रः संवरुणः सन्नो भवते अर्यमा सन्नो इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः सन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायु त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म असि त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि रीतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मा अवतु तत्त्वाकारम् अवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 जय गुरुदेव हर हर। Now, after the invocation of Guru Parampara and Panchadevata, what we have learned from Guruji, how to start our study, weekly study, then I'm entering into the memorial studies, what we are doing every week, the work of Guruji. And we are in the preface. And now today, there will be the final episode. There will be the final class for this preface one. And we will complete today the preface part. So we have completed the causation theory, up to causation theory, Satkarivar, Kare Karane Nihitam. Last week we have completed, and today we are just starting of ignorance in his preface, and slowly he will build up. He will read the theory of ignorance in the upcoming chapters. So let's start the discussion. So in Kasmir Shavism, ignorance is not simply absence of knowledge. And Guruji used to talk about this one, as I remember. So here, ignorance doesn't mean just have to just start. So I'm just taking the pause. So now in Kasmir Shavism, as Guruji said many times during his lectures, ignorance is not simply absence of knowledge, but it is misdirected knowledge. Or he's saying apurn gyan. Apurn gyan is ignorance. Agyan is apurn gyan. That's why the second sutra is coming like a Jnanam Bandha. So this is very, very much crucial to understand in Kasmir Shavism how to think about ignorance. So ignorance is not emptiness. It doesn't mean the void, or it doesn't mean the lack. It is distortion. It is apurunta. It is imperfect knowledge. That is the ignorance. No gyan is not ignorance. Apurn gyan, distorted knowledge, that is the ignorance. So avidya, we can take avidya like a vipriti jnana at first instance. So it means a wrong cognition, especially misidentifying the self, the swarup. So misidentification of the swarup. Instead of prativigya, so instead of recognizing oneself as universal Shiva consciousness, one identified once himself or herself like a body, sthul deha, like a mind, manas, or like an ego, ahankara. So the limited individuality that is coming up only due to ignorance. So this is the Deha Atma Buddhi. So Deha Atma Buddhi that is coming up only due to the ignorance. So now think about the difference from the avidya. So avidya is a beginningless ignorance that wills Brahma. If we go, in Vedanta theory, so Brahma is being willed by Kasmir Shavism. Ignorance is contraction of the awareness. It is the sankoch of awareness. That is ignorance. The erroneous knowledge. That is ignorance in Kasmir Shavism. So it is not separate from the ontological principle here. It is self-willing. Self-willing means it is a tirobhav. It is the pidan. It is the act of Shiva. Shiva is concealing himself. So this is very important to understand. There is no second principle like Maya that stands apart in Advaita Vedanta. Here, it's not separate from the Shiva. Here, nothing separate from the Shiva. Basically. So, actually, the consciousness never disappears. So, even in ignorance, consciousness remains fully present. So, consciousness remains fully present. So, what changes? What changes is the self-recognition. Self-recognition. Because ignorance is partial awareness here. Apurn gyan, erroneous knowledge. So ignorance is giving partial awareness. So ignorance is the partial awareness. It is not absence of awareness. So it's a philosophical illusion we can understand here. And now ignorance is, related to the three malas, because these three malas that is coming from the ignorance only. The anamal, that is the sense of limitation, and the maimal, that is the sense of differentiation, and the karamal, That is the karmic conditioning. So ignorance is structured. You know how ignorance is being structured now. So it's a not chaotic to understand. It's a very much structured. It's a metaphysical architecture one can understand by the blessings of Guru, by the blessings of Guru. So the self-limitation of Shiva. So now the radical insight we can understand here. Ignorance is not imposed externally. That's very much clear. It's a tirobhava, tirobhav, it's a pidan. That's concealing is coming. So not anything not happening from external. Shiva's own self-contraction, his own sankoch, through the Swatantra Shakti, through the absolute freedom, consciousness limits itself. Liberation reinterpreted here. If the ignorance is misrecognition, then liberation, what is liberation? Liberation is recognition. Liberation is prativigya, nothing else. So no new knowledge is being acquired. Here only the correction of the orientation. So Saivas of Kasmir is only looking for, only checking, only aligning the orientation, correct orientation of the knowledge. And this is the epistemological liberation. So one can be liberated in his life only. That is called Jivana Mukta here in this theory. So we need to understand the philosophical significance. The philosophical significance in this doctrine solves multiple problems. No ontological dualism, so this problem is solved here. In Trika's philosophy, no ontological dualism, no eternal evil principle like Abrahamic principle. Abrahamic doctrines need the evil principle. No second reality and no metaphysical fall. So everything remains within the consciousness, even ignorance. Ignorance is also within the boundary of the consciousness, nothing beyond the consciousness. Here in this theory, this is the real, non-dual. This is the Iswar Advaitavad. The psychological relevance also we can check. In lived experience, we constantly misidentify. How we are misidentifying, I'm giving you an example, like I am angry. So I am angry, or that feeling, I am afraid, or I am limited. Shavism is saying, Shavism says there are contracted identifications. Recognize yourself as the witness consciousness, that is the liberation. The Sakshi Bhav, that is the liberation. Witness consciousness. So I'm just moving next slide with this thought. In Kasmir Shavism, ignorance is not upon light, forgetting some water. So in Kasmir Shavism, ignorance is not darkness imposed upon the light. It is the light forgetting its own luminosity. So liberation is therefore not acquisition, but remembrance. That's the Prativigya only. Let's come to the Next slide. The Kasmir Shavism and Advaita Vedanta. So it's very important to understand, even in the beginning, when you start the Trika, the basic difference between the Kasmir Shavism and the Advaita Vedanta. That's why Guruji very slightly touches upon this comparison. So both Advaita Vedanta and Kasmir Shavism are non-dual systems. However, their understanding of absolute differs significantly. This is not opposition, it is differentiation. Gurudev very beautifully discussed this comparative in the upcoming chapters. But what he is indicating, I'm just elaborating here. I'm just trying to elaborating here. So the first thing is nature of absolute. In Advaita Vedanta, Brahman is nirvana, inactive, pure being, static, and change is explained through Maya. On the other hand, in Kasmir Shavism, in Trika, Shiva, Param Shiva, is consciousness endowed with freedom, Swatantra. It's a self-reflective and dynamically expressive. So the manifestation is intrinsic here. Now we need to understand the aesthetic versus dynamic non-dual. So both the thing like Advaita Vedanta, that's a static non-dual, and the Kasmir Shavism is a dynamic non-dual. So Advaita Vedanta, ultimate reality is beyond activity. So ultimate reality is beyond activity in Advaita Vedanta. So activity belongs to activity. Is intrinsic to consciousness, the scope of the consciousness. That is the Aspanda, the doctrine of Spanda. Kasmir being and being. So the Shiva and the world is unified here. Shiva is ShavismI and Vishwa Uttari. And the Maya versus Shakti, that's need to understand here. So in Advaita, Maya explains appearance of world. World is ultimately unreal. It's a mithya, jagat mithya. Brahm satyam jagat mithya. But in Kasmir Shavism, in our system, Shakti explains manifestation. So world is a real expression. World is avhas of Shiva. Shiva is real, so world is real here. So this is the major ontological difference. Shavism affirms world. That is the major difference. The third one also we need to understand after Maya versus Shakti. That's the liberation. That's the liberation model. The system is giving different liberation model. Advaita Vedanta, liberation through negation, neti. In Nirvana Ashtakam, Adi Shankar is giving beautifully. The beautifully neti is over there. Mano, Buddhi, Ahankar. is going like that. Guruji used to recite these things. But in Shaivism, in our world appears. World appears. So Shaivism preserves absolute unity more radically. Now the experiential implications, that's very important. Touch on here. Advaita, I'm saying, observations of the world. In Shaivism, Shaivism, realization includes world. So every perception is Shiva. Every act is Shakti. So this world affirming non-duality. So philosophical elegance we can have here. In Advaita Vedanta. In Advaita resolves the problem of multiplicity through negation. So balance and respectful. I'm giving this, our Gurudev has indicated this one. The preface subtly positions Kasmir Shaivism as not derivative of the Advaita Vedanta, and at the same time not anti-Vedic, not anti-Advaita Vedanta, not anti-Vedic, but a distinct non-dual metaphysics. So this is important for a scholarly framing. So Kasmir Shaivism does not deny the world in order to preserve non-duality. It explains the world as the pulsation of non-duality itself. In this sense, it offers not a static but a dynamic absolutism. That's the beauty of Kasmir Shaivism. Anuji has subtext one, this comparison here in the focus on. Now the philosophical synthesis, civilized converting us, they are in preface by the way. So if we step back, Kasmir Shaivism so it's a synthesis of multiple streams of Indian thought. if we step back from the doctrinal details, we can have this understanding. So it is not a derivative of any system, and also at the same time, it is not integrative. It is something else. It embraced Indian thoughts from different schools, but in an integrative way, but transformed that one. So let's start with the Sankhya ontology. So from Sankhya ontology, Kasmir Savagism absorbs the structured cosmology, one thing, the layered reality, second thing, the Tattva framework, the third thing, and the Satkarivad. That's very important. As we said, like as Gurudev said, effect pre-exists in the cause. However, Sankhya posits dualism, Purus Prakriti. Savagism reinterpret both within the single consciousness. Thus, a structure retained, dualism transcended. Now, from the second thing, the Buddhist epistemology. From Buddhist, especially Yogacara and the Madhyamika, analytical rigor, Kasmir Savagism took, consciousness-centric analysis, critiques of naive realism, and epistemological precision. So Savagism absorbs this sophistication, but rejects. What rejects? The momentariness, the Chanikvad, the Anatmavad. Instead, it posits the enduring, reflective consciousness. Thus, the epistemology retained, ontological negation rejected there. The third system, the Vedic non-dualism, ontological unity. So from the Upanishads, Atman, the absolute, the ontological unity, the internalization of transcendence, those are the things Kasmir Savagism embraces, Kasmir Savagism absorbs. So Kasmir Savagism absorbs this insight, but unlike Advaita Vedanta, it affirms dynamism, the aspanda. Thus the unity retained and the aesthetic monism avoided. Now the fourth one from the Indian knowledge system, that is the Tantric plexus, the transformative methods, the Tantra. So from the Tantric tradition, Kasmir Savagism absorbs the ritual technology, first thing, the embodied spirituality, second thing, the Sakti theology, the third thing, and the initiatory transmission, the fourth thing. Savagism elevates Tantra into philosophical system. Praxis becomes metaphysics, because before this Kasmir Savagism, it was more ritualistic and cultic, not philosophical. So the integrative achievement, here we can say, I take this opportunity to speak clearly and loudly here about the integrative achievement of Savagism. Kasmir Savagism achieves something extraordinary. It unites a structure of the Sankhya, analysis of Buddhism, unity of Upanishads, and embodiments of Tantra into what? Into dynamic, non-dual consciousness. No other system integrates these streams so coherently. That's why I was saying this is the opportunity to speak loud and proudly how our Shaivism, how our system unites this Indian knowledge system very beautifully. Why this matter? Why this matter? Because the preface is not merely historical here. It prepares us to get into the book. It prepares us to see Kasmir Shaivism as a culmination of centuries of philosophical evolution. It is civilizational synthesis, not sectarian invention. That is the beauty. That is the intellectual maturity. So the Kasmir Shaivism stands at the crossroad of Indian thought, absorbing, transforming, and transcending its predecessors without denying them. This shows intellectual depth. So I'm concluding this slide with the thought in Kasmir Shaivism, ontology, epistemology, ritual, devotion, and metaphysics converge into a single illuminous vision. A non-dual consciousness that is both the ground of reality and the pulsation of becoming. Now I am just taking you into the historiographical significance about the non-dual development and the dialogical evolution. So I'm concluding with this thought. As we conclude the preface, we may now see clearly what the preface invites us to understand. Kasmir Shaivism is not an isolated metaphysical tradition. It is refined culmination of centuries of philosophical dialogue within the Indian civilization. From the ritual cosmology of the Veda, from the existential urgency of the Shravan movements, from the analytical rigor of Buddhist epistemology, from the structured clarity of Sankhya ontology, and from the transformative depth of Tantric praxis, there emerges a system that unites ontology, epistemology, ritual, devotion, and liberation into a single non-dual vision. In Kasmir Shaivism, the absolute is not a static being, it is luminous, self-reflective, dynamic consciousness. The world is not illusion to be negated, it is the pulsation of that consciousness itself. And bondage is not a fall, it is a self-contraction. Some liberation is not acquisition, it is recognizing. not because it rejects other systems, but because it integrates them. And ultimately, it leaves us with a simple yet profound insights. The consciousness by which we inquire the reality into reality in itself, the very reality we seek. Om Namah Shivaya. Jai Gurudev. Har Har. So in the next week, we will go through, the first chapter. Now I'm concluding with Bharavastra. Let's come. शरण्यं मयचिततया हृदवन्दे वन्मये तदसे समिदा